When my sister damaged her rented Range Rover, my parents paid $9,200 in fees without asking a single question. When my roof started leaking during a storm, Dad said, "Handle your own mess." So I stopped paying the $4,400 monthly loan on the beach condo I bought for them. My sister arrived with 3 suitcases for vacation and asked, "Can we still stay here for the week?" I looked at her and said, "Handle your own mess." The drip hit the bucket before I finished placing it. Third time that month, I had moved it across the living room floor. A few inches to the left each time because the water kept finding new paths through the plaster. June, on the South Carolina coast. The rain does not break through a roof all at once. It seeps. It finds the weak seam, the old nail hole. The spot where the flashing pulled loose 2 winters ago, and it works its way down through the insulation until it shows up on your ceiling as a brown ring that gets a little wider every week. I knelt on the hardwood in the dark, pressed my palm against the plaster where the drywall had gone soft, and felt the water pulse through it like a heartbeat in a wall that was giving up. My parents had written a check for $9,200 7 days earlier. For a rental car, my sister backed into a parking meter. I called Clayton at midnight. He picked up on the second ring. I could hear a late-night sports recap playing behind him, the volume low, and I told him the roof was leaking again, that the plaster over the kitchen was starting to bow, and I did not want the ceiling to come down before I could get a roofer out in the morning. I was not asking him for money. What I wanted was his read on it, the way a son asks a father who spent 30 years around water damage and structural failure whether the bowing meant the joists were compromised. He listened for about 4 seconds. "Handle your own mess." Then, the click. 3 words and a dial tone. I stood in my living room with the phone in my hand and the bucket filling on the floor, and I thought about the way Lenore had wrapped her arms around Fallon at the kitchen table 3 weeks earlier, rubbing her back, saying, "Accidents happen, baby," while Clayton tore a check out of the book and slid it across the table like he was paying for a pizza. Fallon had rented a Range Rover for a girls' weekend and backed it into a concrete parking bollard at a shopping plaza. Cracked the rear quarter panel, damaged the liftgate, triggered the sensor array. The rental company came back with a bill, the bodywork, the loss of use fee for the days the vehicle was off the lot, the administrative charge, the deductible her card did not cover. $9,200. Clayton wrote the check without asking her how it happened. He wrote it the way you write a check for something that does not hurt. Lenore hugged her. Fallon posted a photo of her nails that same night, captioned "Rough week, treating myself." I saw the photo. I saw it the same day I moved a bucket across my living room floor for the second time. I did not say anything, because saying something in my family had never once changed an outcome. It only gave them a reason to explain why I was overreacting. I need you to understand what I had been doing while all of that happened, because the two things sat on opposite ends of the same 3 years, and I had been too busy paying to line them up. I had been paying $4,400 a month on a beach condo for 3 years. 36 payments. $158,400. I bought that condo when I was 29 because Clayton talked about a place by the ocean the way other men talk about retirement, with a hunger in his voice. A belief that one day he would sit on a deck with a cup of coffee and watch the tide roll in and finally feel like he had made it. He never had the money to buy one. On a firefighter's pension and Lenore's part-time hours at the flower shop, a $600,000 beach condo was a fantasy he talked about the way you talk about a lottery win. I had the money. The business had finally turned the corner, so I bought it. My name went on the deed. My name went on the mortgage. My name went on the insurance policy. My checking account funded it every month, on the first, automatic, before I even looked at the balance. I kept paying because it was the only thing he ever asked me for. In 32 years, my father had never asked me for anything, because asking would have meant admitting I could give him something he could not get himself. The condo let him have it both ways. He got the ocean view, and he got to tell himself it was family. I should have noticed he stopped saying thank you after month 4. The truth is, I did notice. I just did not want it to mean what it meant. 1 week after the storm, Clayton hosted a cookout in his backyard. Burgers and hot links on the grill, the smoker going with a pork shoulder that had been on since dawn, 12 people in folding chairs scattered across the lawn. Lenore carried out the pasta salad in the big glass bowl. Fallon was there with her phone, angling shots of the food for her social media, holding a hot link up to the light like it was a product she was paid to sell. Edgar sat in the shade in his usual corner chair, 84 years old, a plate balanced on his knee and a glass of sweet tea sweating on the arm of the chair. He does not say much at big gatherings. He watches. I brought Jace, my business partner, because he had never met my family, and I wanted him to see the part of me that had a father and a yard and a history, not just the man who answered maintenance calls at 11 at night. Clayton stood at the grill with a spatula in his hand and told the story to the whole yard. So Dane calls me at midnight because his ceiling is dripping. He flipped a burger, the fat hit the coals and hissed. 2 neighbors leaned in, already grinning, because they knew Clayton was building to something. Now this is a man who manages 25 beach houses for a living. 25. And he cannot keep his own roof dry. The neighbors laughed. Clayton was enjoying it now, the way he enjoyed an audience. Fallon brings a rental car back with a dent, and we help her out. Because that is what family does. Dane's ceiling drips a little, and suddenly he needs Daddy at midnight. He pointed the spatula across the yard at me. You got a pickup truck and a spreadsheet, son. Handle your own mess. Lenore laughed. Fallon glanced up from her phone, smiled, went back to it. The neighbors clinked their beer cans together. And Edgar, in the corner chair, set his fork down on the edge of his plate and did not pick it up again. Jace was standing behind me at the cooler. I felt him go still. He had known me for 6 years, and he had never seen my family. And now his first impression was my father getting a yard full of people to laugh at me over a leaking roof I paid for out of the same pocket that paid for their ocean view. I did not turn around. I picked up my drink, took a sip, and let Clayton have his laugh. Because here is what you learn managing 25 beach properties for a living. You learn to wait. You learn that the loudest man at the cookout is usually the one with the least equity, and the quiet man in the corner with his hand on a folded deed is usually the one who owns the ground everyone is standing on. I had spent 3 years being quiet. I was about to stop. If you have ever paid for something every month for years and then watched the people you paid for call it theirs, you already know what this channel is about. Subscribe to Family Secret Tales if you want to hear what I did next, because it was not what any of them expected from the son with the pickup truck and the spreadsheet. 2 days after the cookout, I made my monthly maintenance rounds. DM Coastal Properties manages 25 vacation rental units up and down the coast. Jace and I built the company from a single listing 6 years ago, one condo we cleaned ourselves and photographed with a borrowed camera, and it grew from there. Monthly walkthroughs are standard practice. Check for damage. Restock the supply closets, verify the cleaning crews did their job, photograph everything with the date stamp on. I do it for every property I manage. The beach condo, the one with my parents' names in the air but only mine on the paper, was my last stop that Thursday. I let myself in with my key. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Coconut sunscreen and a dryer sheet brand I do not stock. I stock unscented. I stock it in all 25 units because guests complain about perfumed linens. This was the cheap floral kind you buy in a yellow box, and it was in my parents' condo, which meant someone had done laundry here recently who was not family doing a casual weekend. I walked the unit the way I walk all of them. The hardwood by the sliding door had fresh scuff marks, the arc-shaped scrapes that luggage wheels leave when someone drags a heavy suitcase across a floor at an angle. 2 towels were missing from the linen closet, and the remaining ones were folded in a way I do not fold them. The deck chair on the left had a cracked armrest that was not cracked at my last visit. And on the kitchen counter, held down by the salt shaker, was a receipt from a cleaning service called Blue Wave. $45. Dated 6 days earlier. Blue Wave is not a company I have ever hired. My crews handle every turnover I run. I know what a rental turnover looks like. The evidence shows up every single week across 24 properties. Luggage scuffs, missing linens, third-party cleaning receipts, a stranger's dryer sheets. Someone had been renting my parents' condo out to guests, and it was not me, and my parents had never mentioned it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text in the family group chat from Fallon, Henderson family wants the condo next Sat, same $500. Should I leave the lockbox code or meet them there? I stood in the kitchen and read it twice. Then, 4 minutes later, it vanished. Fallon deleted it. But I had the group chat open on my screen when it landed, because Lenore had sent a message that morning about Edgar's upcoming birthday, and I had been meaning to reply, and so I saw Fallon's text arrive in real time and I screenshotted it before the delete could reach my phone. She had meant to send it to Lenore. Lenore's name and the family group chat sit 2 entries apart in her message list. 1 tap off. That is all it takes. That 1 tap told me everything the smell and the scuffs and the receipt had only hinted at. Fallon was not borrowing the condo. Fallon was operating it, renting it to strangers for $500 a weekend and coordinating with our mother about lockbox codes and key handoffs. I searched Stay Local on my phone right there in the kitchen. It took under 2 minutes. My parents' condo, listed under Fallon's name and photo. Her pictures, shot from angles I recognized because I had staged those same rooms for the original purchase listing 3 years ago. 14 reviews spread across 8 months. Great weekend getaway. Fallon was super responsive. Easy check-in. Beautiful view, will book again. The nightly rate showed $500 for a 2-night weekend. 14 weekends at $500. $7,000 my sister had collected, renting out a property she did not own, did not pay for, had never once contributed a dollar toward, while I told myself the condo sitting empty half the year was just the cost of family. I walked out to the deck and called Jace. Pull up Stay Local. Search my parents' condo address. I heard him typing on the other end. A pause while the page loaded. Then his voice changed. Dane, this is listed under a Fallon. No permit number. There is no short-term rental registration on file for this unit. I am looking at the county portal right now. If the hoe gets a complaint, that violation lands on the owner of record. A beat. That is you. Your name is on the deed. I know whose name is on the deed. I mean it. This is not a slap on the wrist. Some of these coastal HOAs will fine $2,000, $3,000 and suspend rental rights for 90 days. If you ever wanted to sell or rent it yourself, a live violation on the file is a problem. How long has the listing been up? First review is 8 months old. 14 reviews. She has been running this since October, Dane. He went quiet for a second. Does your dad know? My dad has been telling people it is his beach place for 3 years. My mother set up the key handoffs. What do you think? I think you need Sutter, and I think you need him this week. I told him I would call him back. I hung up and stood on the deck my sister had been renting to strangers and looked at the water Clayton called his, and I did the thing I do for a living. I started building the file. The hoe had already moved. I checked the condo mailbox on my way out, a habit from monthly rounds because owners get HOA notices and utility mail there, and inside was a letter on the association's letterhead, dated 10 days earlier. I read it standing at the bank of mailboxes in the parking garage. Complaint received regarding unauthorized short-term rental activity at the above unit. A resident has reported repeated short-stay guests with luggage on a near-weekly basis. Short-term rentals under 30 days require an owner-filed permit, which is not on record for this unit. Owner of record Dane. My last name. My address for correspondence. This letter serves as a formal warning. A subsequent violation will result in a $2,500 fine and a 90-day suspension of all rental privileges for the unit. 10 days. The letter had been sitting in that mailbox for 10 days while Fallon booked the Henderson family for next Saturday. If a second complaint came in, And it would, because the neighbor who filed the first one was clearly watching. The fine and the 90-day suspension would hit my record. And here is why that mattered more than the money. I had already decided, standing in that kitchen, that I was going to sell the condo. A live HOA violation shows up in the resale disclosure documents. Buyers' agents read those. It spooks buyers, it invites lowball offers. It can knock $10,000 or $15,000 off a sale or kill it entirely. My sister's side business was about to cost me real money on the way out the door. So before I did anything else, I cleared it. The next morning I called the HO board manager, a woman named Pruitt, who handles the association's day-to-day. I got your warning letter, I told her. The short-term rentals are real, but they were not authorized by me. I never filed a permit because I never intended to rent the unit. I just found out a family member has been operating it without my knowledge. That is a serious claim, Mr. Dane. Can you document it? I can. I have a text where she coordinates a booking. I have a cleaning receipt in a name that is not mine. And I will sign a statement that I never authorized any of it. Send me all three. If it checks out, the board can attribute the activity to the third party and clear your file. But I will be honest with you. If it happens again and the guest activity continues, we will not be able to separate you from it a second time. It will not happen again. I am changing the locks this week. I submitted the three things that afternoon. The screenshot of Fallon's wrong recipient text about the Henderson booking and the lockbox code, the Blue Wave cleaning receipt, and a signed statement that I had never authorized short-term rental activity at the unit. The board reviewed it. 3 business days later, Pruitt emailed me. The warning was rescinded. And the file note now read owner not responsible. Unauthorized third-party activity. No permit violation attributed to owner. My record was clean. The path to sell was clear. But it cost me a morning on the phone and the specific humiliation of explaining to my homeowners association that my own sister had been running an illegal rental out of the condo I bought for our parents. That was the moment it stopped being a family disagreement and became inventory. Jace and I did what we do for 25 other properties. We staged the condo. We have the furniture pieces, the lighting kits, the wide-angle camera, the listing templates. We spent an afternoon making the unit look like the $600,000 beach property it was, and I shot 32 photographs. And I wrote the listing the same way I write every listing. Square footage and ocean view and steps to the sand. Except this time I was describing a place I had spent $158,000 on and slept in maybe 10 nights across 3 years. There was a tackle box in the hall closet. Inside it, wrapped in a Ziploc bag, was Edgar's fishing reel. A vintage Mitchell 300, chrome and black, the handle worn smooth from 40 years in his hands. He gave it to me when I was 12, standing on a fishing pier, and he said, "Every line you cast comes back. Make sure it is worth the throw." That reel had been in that closet for 2 years. 2 years. I could not get a single weekend at my own condo to take it out on the water, because the place was always occupied, first by family visits I scheduled around, and then, I now understood, by strangers paying Fallon $500. I opened the bag, looked at the reel, the chrome dull, with 2 years of sitting still, and I put it back. Not yet. Soon, I called Sutter, a real estate attorney I had worked with on closings for the company. "I need 2 letters, I told him. One demand letter to my sister for $7,000 in rental income she collected off my property without permission, and a 30-day notice to my parents to remove their belongings, because I am selling the unit. Your sister was renting your condo? Under her own name, on Stay Local, for 8 months. Do you have proof she kept the money?" I have the listing, the reviews, and the nightly rate. 14 weekends at $500. She never sent me a dime. "Then we send it certified," Sutter said. "Both letters. I want a signature on delivery for each one, so nobody can claim they never got it. And Dane, do not talk to any of them about the money directly. Every conversation about the $7,000 goes through me from here." He drafted both by Wednesday. The demand letter would go out certified, and the removal notice the same way, so there would be a delivery record on both. I changed the locks Thursday. A locksmith rekeyed both doors while I stood in the unit and watched, and then I mounted a real estate lockbox on the front door handle. The professional-grade combination kind my company uses on every managed property. New keys in my pocket. The old ones, the ones Fallon and Lenore had copies of, no longer opened anything. The listing went live Friday morning at $635,000. If you are still with me, make sure you are subscribed to Family Secret Tales, because what happened Saturday morning is the part I replay every time somebody tells me family and business should never mix. They are right, they just have the reason backwards. Saturday, 9:30 in the morning. I was inside the condo, sitting at the kitchen table, because Jace had heard through a mutual contact that Fallon was telling people she had the beach place booked for a girls' week starting that day. Her SUV pulled into the driveway. 3 suitcases packed in the back. I could see them through the rear window. A friend rode in the passenger seat, sunglasses pushed up on her forehead, a canvas tote on her lap. Fallon got out, walked up to the front door, and stopped. The lockbox was mounted where her eyes expected a plain handle. She reached past it and tried her key anyway. It did not turn. She tried again, twisting harder, jiggling it the way people do when they refuse to accept that a key has stopped working. She knocked. I opened the door. "Dane?" She looked at the lockbox, then at me, then past me into the unit where the staging furniture had rearranged the living room she thought she knew. "What is all this? Can we still stay here for the week?" "No." Her face moved through 3 expressions in about 2 seconds. Confusion first, then the fast calculation of someone running the odds, then the anger that arrives when the odds come back bad. She pulled out her phone and called Clayton. I could hear his voice come through the speaker, sharp and loud, the words not quite clear, but the tone unmistakable. She said the condo and locked out, and he is being insane, and then she hung up and told her friend to wait in the car, and the friend, sensing what was coming, was glad to. Clayton's truck pulled in behind Fallon's SUV 25 minutes later, Lenore in the passenger seat. Clayton got out, walked past his daughter, past the lockbox without seeming to register what it was, and pushed through the front door without knocking, the way a man walks into a place he has decided is his. "What are you doing?" He stopped in the middle of the living room. "You cannot lock your own family out of a family property, Dane. What is this?" "It is not a family property. It is my property. And I am not locking anyone out of anything. I am selling it." That last word landed. Lenore's hand went to her mouth. Fallon said, "Selling?" Like the word did not fit in the sentence. Clayton just stared at me, and I could see him waiting for me to fold. Because I had always folded. Because folding was the thing I did that made me useful. I did not raise my voice. I walked to the kitchen counter and I let them follow me. On the counter, I had laid it all out that morning, the way I lay out a closing file for a buyer. 36 mortgage statements printed and squared into a stack. Each one showing a $4,400 payment drawn from my account with my name on the header. On top of the stack, Fallon's Stay Local listing, printed with her name and her photo. Beside it, the 14 guest reviews, 2 of them thanking Fallon by name for the easy check-in. The HOA warning letter addressed to me. And the deed. 1 page. 1 name. Clayton picked up the top mortgage statement and read it. His jaw set the way it does when he is deciding whether to fight. Lenore picked up the Stay Local printout and went very still. And Fallon looked down at the counter and saw her own photographs, her own name, on a rental listing she had believed nobody in the family would ever find. And her face did the thing I have seen 100 times in this business when someone realizes the paperwork already knows. "I have paid $158,400 on this condo over 3 years," I said. "You paid $9,200 for Fallon's rental car in 1 afternoon and never asked her how it happened. When my roof was leaking and I called you at midnight, you told me to handle my own mess. So that is what I am doing. I am handling the mess. All of it." Fallon spoke first, because Fallon always speaks first. I did not think the subletting was that big a deal. It was just weekends. The place was sitting empty. The place sat empty because I paid for it to sit ready for a family that treated it like a hotel they did not have to pay for. I slid the HOA letter across the counter to her. This came to my mailbox. My name. My record. The county has no permit on file, which means every one of those 14 weekends was an illegal rental. And if a second complaint had come in, the fine and the suspension would have hit me. You made $7,000 on my property, Fallon, and you almost cost me $15,000 selling it. She looked at the letter. She did not have anything to say to a document. How was I supposed to know about a permit? She said finally, "You are the property guy. You never told me I needed one. You never told me you were renting my condo. That is how permits work, Fallon. You file them before you take strangers' money, not after." Clayton set down the mortgage statement. "This has always been a family arrangement, Dane, you know that. We all understood the deal." "What deal? Say it out loud." "Tell me the terms of the deal where I pay $4,400 a month and you rent it out and keep the income and call it ours. You are twisting this. Then untwist it. Tell me your name on a single page in this stack." I spread my hand over the counter. The deed, the mortgage, the insurance, the tax bill. One page with your name on it, and I will apologize and take the listing down right now. He did not move. Lenore had not said a word since selling. She was still holding the Stay Local printout, reading Fallon's name over and over like it might rearrange itself into something she could defend. "Lenore," I looked at her. "You set up the key handoffs. Fallon's text was meant for you. You knew every weekend she booked. I thought," she started and stopped. "I thought it was helping her. She has the girls. She needed the money. So did I. I needed the $4,400 a month I was sending into this place. Nobody asked if I needed it. Nobody answered that either. You stood at your grill last Saturday," I said to Clayton, "and told a yard full of people that I manage 25 beach houses and cannot keep my own roof dry. You are right. 25 is the number, and I paid for this one out of the same account. For 6 years I have been fixing other people's roofs while you laughed about mine in front of my business partner and the neighbors and Grandpa." "That was a joke, Dane." His voice had lost some of its size. "It was just a joke. $158,000 is not a joke." I let that sit. Through the sliding door I could see Jace on the deck, where I had asked him to wait, close enough to be a witness and far enough to stay out of it. Fallon's friend was still in the SUV with the engine idling. $158,000 for your condo, I said. $9,200 for her car. 0 for my roof. Handle your own mess, Dad. 22 words. I had been carrying them since the cookout, turning them over during property walkthroughs and the long drives down the coast to check on units that belonged to strangers, and when they finally came out, they came out flat and even. The exact tone I used when I read a line item balance to a client who owes money on their unit. No heat in it, just the arithmetic of 3 years. "The listing went live yesterday," I went on. "You have 30 days to remove your belongings. Sutter is sending the notice certified, so there is a record. The mortgage payment stops August 1st, and once it sells, we are done." Clayton's hand moved toward his car keys on the counter, then stopped and pulled back, as if he was no longer sure the keys on my kitchen counter were still his to pick up. His foot scuffed the tile, a half step toward the door that never finished. He folded his arms across his chest and then unfolded them a second later, like the position had reminded him of something that hurt. "I will tell the HOA board this was always a family arrangement," he said. "I will tell them we all agreed. I will challenge the sale." I picked the deed up off the counter and held it up between us. 1 page. "Whose name is on this, Dad?" He looked at it. He did not answer. I folded the deed along its crease and slid it into my back pocket. Then I walked past him, past Lenore, past Fallon, to the hall closet, and I took out the tackle box and lifted the Ziploc bag from inside and unwrapped Edgar's reel. The chrome caught the morning light coming through the slider. I carried it through the living room toward the back door, and behind me I heard the front door open and Edgar walked in. He had driven himself, parked on the street. Jace had called him 20 minutes earlier because I had asked him to, because I wanted the one man in that family who had built something with his own hands to see what the rest of them had done with what I built with mine. Edgar crossed to the kitchen counter, slowed the way 84 moves, and looked down at the stack of mortgage statements. He held out his hand, and I gave him the deed. He read it, front and back, holding it at arm's length the way he reads everything now. Then he set it on the counter and turned to Clayton. "Your boy paid $158,000 for this place," Edgar said, "and you stood in my yard and called it yours and laughed at his roof. I built my own house with these hands 60 years ago, every board. And I never once called it anything but what it was. Mine, because I paid for it, because I built it." He handed the deed back to me. "That is how it works, Clayton. I taught you that. I do not know where it went." He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. He turned and walked out the backslider to the deck, and he stood there next to Jace and waited for me while I finished what I had come to finish. I went out to the pier behind the condo with the reel in my hand. The morning was still gray at the edges, the water flat and pewter-colored. I sat down on the end of the pier with my feet hanging over the water, threaded the line, and cast it out for the first time in 2 years. Behind me, through the open slider, I could hear Clayton's voice, lower now, and Lenore's and Fallon's, 3 people standing in a kitchen full of paper that told the truth better than any of them could argue against it. I let the line settle on the water, and I did not turn around. That evening, Edgar called Clayton. I know what he said because Edgar told me, plainly, the next morning over coffee, the way he tells me everything. "You took that boy's money for 3 years, and then you laughed about his roof at my table," Edgar told him. "I was sitting right there. I heard every word. Do not come to my house for Sunday dinner. Do not come for my birthday. Do not come at all. Until you have either written Dane a check or told him you are sorry. I do not care which one comes first. But one of them has to. A man does not eat at my table after he does that to his own son." He hung up before Clayton could answer. 84 years old, and he still ends a conversation the way he ends a workday, when the thing is finished and there is nothing left to say. Clayton apologized to Edgar in August. He did not apologize to me. He has not spoken to me since the morning in the kitchen. Sometimes, Edgar tells me, he drives past the condo. There are new curtains in the windows now and a child's bicycle leaning against the porch rail, because a young family bought it and it is their home. Clayton slows at the end of the block. He does not stop. He is, for the first time in 3 years, a man standing outside a beach property he cannot go into. Edgar told me he mentioned it once at a family dinner Edgar hosted that I was not at. He said he still cannot believe you sold it, Edgar told me. I told him, "You did not sell his condo. You sold yours." He got quiet after that. The condo sold in 54 days at $628,000. The mortgage payoff was $460,000. Closing costs and fees ran about $38,000. I netted a little under $130,000. The 2 mortgage payments I skipped after August 1st were covered out of the sale proceeds at closing before they ever aged far enough to touch my credit, which is exactly why I listed and stopped paying in the same week instead of one before the other. Jace ran DM Coastal on his own during the 6 weeks I was buried in the sale, and the company picked up 3 new units that summer while I was gone. We are talking now about a second division, lake houses, inland properties, the kind of quiet water Edgar taught me to fish. Sutter's demand letter reached Fallon the week after the confrontation. $7,000, certified, signed for. She called me once. "Can we talk about this, Dane? Just you and me?" I gave her Sutter's number and told her the conversation about the $7,000 would happen through him. She paid $2,200 in September, and the rest is on a payment plan, with Sutter's office holding the schedule. Her social media does not feature beach photos anymore. Lenore was named in the removal notice as the coordinator of the unauthorized guests, because the wrong recipient text about the Henderson booking and the lockbox code had been meant for her, and the HOA file reflected that. To close the association's file cleanly for the buyers, She had to sign a statement acknowledging the unauthorized rental activity. She texted me once, a week after she signed it. "I am sorry about the listing." 4 words. I did not answer. She does not coordinate keys for anyone anymore. I hired a roofer the week after closing. He replaced the flashing, tore out the water-damaged plaster, patched the ceiling, and sealed the seam that had been letting the rain in for 2 winters. $2,800. The ceiling over my kitchen is dry now for the first time in a year. I handled my own mess. It cost me $2,800, which is less than a third of what my parents spent on Fallon's rental car without blinking, and they could have written that check the same night I called. They chose not to. That was always the whole story. Not the money. The choosing. If you made it this far, you are the reason I told it. Family Secret Tales is where I put the stories about what happens when the people who raised you decide your money belongs to them and your problems belong only to you. Subscribe if you have not, and I will see you in the next one. A Saturday morning in August. Edgar's Lake House, 2 hours inland, where the water is quiet and the trees come all the way down to the bank. The pier there is shorter than the one at the condo, the boards grayer and softer underfoot, and it does not have an ocean view or a 6-figure mortgage. Edgar sat behind me in a folding chair with the newspaper open on his lap, reading something in the back pages, his sweet tea sweating on the armrest the way it always is. The reel was in my hands. His Mitchell 300, chrome finally bright again because I had cleaned it and oiled it and worked the handle until it turned smooth. 40 years of his hands on it, and now the start of mine. I cast the line out over the lake and watched it settle on water that belonged to no one and everyone, that no one at a cookout would ever call theirs. Edgar looked up from his newspaper, watched the line for a second, and went back to reading. He did not say anything. He did not need to. "Every line you cast comes back," he told me once. "Make sure it is worth the throw." No condo. No $4,400 a month. No mortgage statement on the first. No cheap dryer sheets in a linen closet I paid for. No strangers with suitcases sleeping in rooms I financed. No one, anywhere, calling something mine and meaning it belonged to them. The reel clicked as the line pulled tight. I let it run.